It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Good moment. Welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment, indeed.
We've got a stilted cadence today.
A little bit of a stilted cadence.
That's okay.
Maybe there's not the most flowy energy circulation possible.
Yeah. Every once in a while, it's a frantic moment around here.
It is. I would particularly love the furniture toppling over before we got started.
That's one of my great tricks.
That says
You like
all.
that?
It's kind of. It's if everything in life is a metaphor.
The furniture falling over.
And it is.
Right.
If, right?
So what is that?
Let's pretend.
Yeah, let's pretend.
Let's pretend that it's not. So
no, let's stop pretending that it's not. Treat everything as a metaphor.
Exactly. It's just so
What's being reflected.
Perfect to come into the studio and it's sort of a little frenzied.
You liked the Stacker's language, I remember. That this experience of being able to handle a certain amount of feedback, as it were, from your universe.
A certain amount of stress.
No, wait, let me tell you. Yeah. So you can handle a certain level of art. We'll call it stress, but it's really feedback. And then another stacker comes on, another stacker, until finally you have that moment of, I guess you'd call it surrender. It could be a lot of things.
Well, it's either a moment of surrender. It's always a moment of crisis. It can be a moment of practical crisis. It can be a moment of spiritual crisis. It can be any number of kinds of crises. But when the world appears to come at you at a rate that is inundating beyond, I'll speak personally because I'm deep in the thick of it, beyond my capacity, my current capacity to handle it, then we experience it as crisis. And there is a wonderful tradition. It's helpful for me to take my advice. I'm not using it, right? It's helpful for me to remember that crises have very beautiful spiritual roots and are opportunities for enormous. They're portals of growth, portals of love, wisdom, understanding, insight, and growth. And they, as you pointed out, they bring you to surrender. Everything we think we know, everything. Anyway, this is all brought up. Our listeners are driving along, and they're either leaning in or they're switching to K-Rock right now. But we're talking about this because I am feeling stressed, and I am right on the edge of my capacity to deal with all of the kinds of inundation or all the kinds of energies that they're not inundating yet, but I'm breathing.
You're getting some feedback from your universe, as it were, that is going to require you to surrender and
some opportunity and some
challenge.
Yeah, some challenge.
Congratulations. I always say to clients, I'm sorry and congratulations.
That's great. That's so they must appreciate that weeks later, but in the moment they want to slug you for that.
Well, sometimes, but hopefully they.
That reminds me of many years ago. I've talked about my friend and mentor Maury, who passed away several weeks ago. But many years ago, he used to say to me, "Is this a choice?" And who's making this choice, and and what's the choice that you're making, and where is that choice being made from? What of the multitude of intelligences is making that choice? And in the moment, you want to kill a guy. It's sometimes, as my daughter used to say, living with her dad was like living with Freud. She used to say, "Isn't a cigar ever a cigar?" I'd say, why are you smoking cigar?
Who do we have today?
Oh, wow. We have the Love Doctor. I don't know whether anybody still refers to Daphne as the Love Doctor, but I've heard her referred to as the Love Doctor.
We'll call her Love Doctor.
We have Daphne Rose Kingma, who's been a therapist and a lecturer for a long time. I'm not going to say how many years because I love her. And she looks younger than she's been in practice. She's the author of, I think it's like 12 bestsellers, including Finding True Love, Coming Apart, and my favorite, The Future of Love. It's my favorite because it's inscribed to me. So it's my favorite. It's my favorite. So Daphne, welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Oh, I'm delighted to be with you in the midst of all the crises we can cook up together.
Yeah.
Great. Let's start cooking. That's what I need now is more drama.
Well, this is actually something interesting because Barnett and I have said many times that the advice to not take things personally is good advice at a particular stage of development. And then there's a stage of development where you begin to take everything personally. You begin to see, at least from my vantage point, and Barnett I know shares this, what is being reflected that you can own. And in that way, you feel empowered. But here's what I wonder, and I kind of wanted to pose this to you today, is that what I see in the world collectively, the collective experience is a lot of people aren't at a stage of development where they can take things on personally in a conscious way, but they may in fact be taking things on personally. And here's what I mean by this. The number of people who feel like something needs to be fixed, right? I wonder if that's a reflection of a deep sense of a collective crisis, sort of maybe the ecological crisis, the financial systems, and even if we're, unable to really pinpoint where it's coming from, that there's a general dis-ease, as it were, and in a childish way, there's a tendency to take it personally in this disempowered way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, exactly, and I think that's so true. I mean, all sorts of things and levels and categories of experience are falling apart, and it's very unnerving, it's very unsettling, it's very, loss of control-ish, and us human critters don't like that very much. And I don't have to repeat all the ways we're seeing it on the big scale, but I think in the personal realm and in the love realm, it's happening a lot, and that's terribly, terribly scary because we've assigned a lot of stuff to, how we lead our intimate lives. We've assigned a lot of expectations of protection and stability and future, and so it's just incredibly unnerving. And these issues go to the heart of the personal person who's, like Barnett said, you want to kill the bearer of the news or the bearer of the experience because it's just so unsettling. And because it comes at, the core of our personal experience. I guess I'm talking about, what I see and what all of us actually are witnessing is the wholesale transformation of relationships from some idea that we used to have about them to some sort of, chaotic stage that is unrecognizable in our memory and yet is very, in my opinion, gorgeously fertile for the future. Yeah, and for the present, actually.
So I'm gonna steal the way Barnett often refers to this, even though he's sitting across from me. Moving from a chaos that is unnerving and overwhelming and scary and disorganizing to a sort of acceptance, which is what we were talking about, where the chaos then becomes beautiful. In other words, it doesn't mean it's not disorganizing. It is, but there's enough faith, hope, whatever the words are, that on the other side of this, something, beautiful and good is going to come out of it.
Yes, and of course that moment, I think, that is the moment of personal annealing. That's the moment when the personal self is in the crucible and is invited, it's insisted upon saying, okay, I'm going to somehow be creative and transformative. I'm going to be willing to be transformed in this moment, or I'm just going to sit here kicking and screaming. So it is it's like Barnett said about his mentor, you want to slug the guy. We don't want to go through these experiences on a personal level, but they are gorgeously transforming when we do.
Well, life is messy, and we have spent our entire lives looking to clean up that mess. We are not shown by our caretakers. We are not shown responses to life other than to pull it into a straight line. And so it's very, very disruptive when we begin to experience challenges for which there are no apparent solutions. No matter how much I sweep the floor, there is no apparent solution to some of the challenges that we face as a world, as a nation, as communities, and in our personal lives, and certainly in my personal life. The fixing of the way I have approached things in the past is not going to is not going to be a response to the challenges. We're going to have to not just sweep the floor, but build an entirely new floor.
And I think you're pointing to something which is so longed for and needed more of in the world, which is that at these moments there really needs to be a creative, a solution out of nothing we've ever done before, out of nothing we know. And I think, just as you said, our caretakers haven't taught us how to live with crisis, although I have to say mine did a pretty good job.
They taught you how to live in crisis.
Yeah.
But not so much how to respond with developing a rapport. This is your life's work has been.
It's in the book.
Exactly. I know because I read the book. So I know that we have a chance of responding to crisis by developing a rapport with the emotional experiences that it brings up and allowing those things to move through, recognizing them and acknowledging them. But we don't. My point was that as small people, we don't see in our homes, we don't see from our teachers, we don't see from those who parent us, whether they're parents literally or not. They don't show us, by virtue of the way they live their lives, any familiarity with having that kind of rapport.
Yes, or with the creativity that is invited to happen at that moment. It's like, take this pile of sticks and make something completely different that you never imagined before.
I love that, a creative response, because, again, more often than not, we go into survival, we go into fix, we go into control, as opposed to, and this is what we were talking about earlier, the beautiful chaos. Well, what if something great and glorious can come out of this? What if I can pause my reactive patterning just enough to allow a different way of responding to what's showing up in my experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is why I am always excited by Barnet Bain, because Barnet is always living and speaking to the power of the creative edge. What are you going to do with the pile of sticks? Or what are you going to do with the complete absence of what you thought was there? Or what are you going to do with a whole bunch of materials that you never imagined combining into anything? And I think it's that energy that in so many instances was missing from our lives. The notion that you can really mine this chaos, that there's possibility there. That energy in itself, that as we're all saying together, we're always looking backward. We're always looking to what was, instead of saying something entirely unimagined can be forged here, and I think that's something. I see that so often in the people I work with, and the people I observe, that there isn't that sense of, what can we make out of this disaster? What possibilities lie here? I'm raring to go to see what, now that the house is burned down, let's build a mud hut and put diamonds in the window frames or whatever.
Let's barbecue with the charcoal.
We have to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to personalize this a little bit, at the risk of getting too personal. But we like risking on this show. That's part of the game. So let's do this. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk about the emotions and a way of being with them. Again, we're so quick in this culture to manage the emotions versus ride them, even if it's a shaky, scary, overwhelming kind of feeling, that there's something valuable in sitting in it for a minute longer than we would normally.
So we're going to ask all of you to sit in it a minute longer while we take.
I think it's a little longer than a minute. I think we have a 3.5 minute break.
We have a 3-minute break here?
Right. So 3 minutes, hang on.
You see how I've been paying
attention? And then we'll come back after the messages.
Over the last 4 years.
Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
So glad to be back with you. This is Barnett. I'm here with Freeman and our guest, Daphne Rose Kingma. Freeman, before the break, you were itching. You almost knocked over your chair for the second time in 30 minutes.
No, I'm not knocking over the chair again. Well, okay, so look, this is what was so powerful this morning. Barnett and I have a quality relationship where we're very authentic with each other. And so I hope this is okay. This is where I was like, I don't know. I probably could have checked with you on the break and said, is it okay
That's
if I do
usually
this?
good. That tells you.
Yeah.
So this is a authenticity litmus test.
Yeah. What occurred is, without going into any of the logistics, because they're really not important, is this morning you were feeling thrown and kind of shaky. And so it's so brilliant because, again, some of you even said to me is, I don't like this feeling. Mm-hmm. And that's when I knew, like, okay, good. Not good because you don't like it. I get,
good, better you than me.
Well,
good. Like, things could be worse.
A part of me.
It could be me.
Okay, a part of me, to be really honest, was like, It's your day to get thrown, or your moment to get thrown. But, something that you've said to me in moments when I'm thrown is your reflection of, I tend to pop out of those quicker than I used to. And I have enough wisdom to know that I will pop out of them, but that there are these shaky moments. Because look, and this is, Daphne, what I think you were sort of talking about is our operating systems, individually and collectively, are coming apart. And that's good news because, look, we've learned to manage and control and manipulate. And that was an initial stage of development that I guess was important. And now it's time to kind of let those old patterns of adaptive patterns of functioning and so forth come apart, so we can be born into something, we can get creative and go wild. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to do, Barnett.
Mm-hmm.
Go wild.
I'm making a note.
Going wild isn't one of the possibilities that is usually listed on the multiple choice test, or option A, B, go wild isn't one of them.
Or move into the discomfort, or move closer to the fire.
Yes. And I think that, this is one of the things I've seen zillions of times in people who go through crises in their relationships, the death of their relationships. It's like unthinkable, unmanageable, unlivable through, they all think and believe, and then suddenly or slowly there's this incredible emergence, like, wow, I get to have a whole other life I never dreamed of having, and if I had stayed there forever, this whole other life wouldn't have been part of this incarnation. I would have had to die and come back as somebody else, but now I get to do it in this life. And those transformative possibilities, especially, as you're saying, Freeman, we're all saying, in the emotional realm, are so hard, because I think another thing we're not very well taught or grounded in is the fact that essentially we are emotional beings. We are the place in which all these, waves and richness and terror and beauty of our feelings happen, and yet we're scared to death of them. We want to put a lid on them. We don't have that sense that, as in deep water, we can actually be carried by a wave back to shore, and it can be a beautiful ride.
I love that.
Well, the emotions they can be terrifying. They can be absolutely terrifying. I had an experience last night. Now, first of all, just for those of our loyal listeners who I don't want you to think this, because we have Daphne on, who is a relationship expert, my relationship is really fine. So thank goodness for that. But I am definitely in the throes of some unexpected and big challenges. And the kinds of emotions that come up, and I have to remind myself to not numb out to them, not to do the anesthetics, not to go numb, or not to go into blame, or not to go into self-pity, not to go into all of the kinds of habituated responses that I have become a virtuoso of over the last 60 years. But so I recognize those as not the real deal, but substitutes for the real deal, and to stay on that narrow path of what is really going on, and those are easier to feel than what is really going on, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
Is this dread? It is an experience. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's this feeling of nothing about my life may be the same. Now.
Little deaths,
little deaths, and they don't feel. As long as I can call them little deaths in the moment, they're not the real deal.
That's a really good point.
I think these terrifying emotions don't feel like little deaths. I think they feel like big deaths.
They feel like death.
The big D.
They feel like the big D.
And so,
yeah.
Getting comfortable with that is just completely antithetical to our grip on life and our wanting to be here. I mean, so it is a hugely psychically dividing and terrifying experience. And if I may offer a tiny Band-Aid, sometimes in that place I just think it's like, okay, what if this is the end of everything? Sometimes I think we need to reel it all the way out to the end and to say, what if this is the end of everything? And will I transform at the end of everything into something or nothing, or
Well, I think that's that's such good advice. The question, will I transform? If I allow myself, and I did tap it several times last night. They call these things the dark nights of the soul. When I tap that, it feels so powerful that there is no place in that for will I transform. If there is place for will I transform, then I am not fully tapping it.
That's so wise.
There's still a part of myself that is observing it. However,
you're still thinking your feelings.
I'm thinking my feelings. So the training, and it is kind of a social training not to go there. And our life, our souls bring us there. They bring us there to reclaim that shadow, those shadow pieces. We are brought there. And the willingness to go there, to have the heart and the courage to go there, willingly, rather than being shoved there. In my head, I know that makes a difference. And even in the speaking of it now, there's power in the telling, because even as we talk about it now, I can feel a breath moving in and out of my body and some release, and I feel a zillion times better. Thank you. Just send me a bill, both you people. So it is a very, very, it happens to be a transformative experience, and it is a birthing of love, to use your language.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the things about it that's so tricky, and you were just leaning into that, Barnett. You said, if I could more willingly go there. But the paradoxical nightmare of it is that we can't willingly go there because it's an awful place to go there.
Yeah, right. Well, I said what I said to Barnett.
The last place
exactly,
on earth
exactly.
or in our psyches that we want to go. So there's always that sort of caring surrender of, okay, this is the last place on earth I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I'm going there anyway. And I think it somehow takes the juice out of the experience if we go there. If we can go there willingly, it's not the experience we need to have.
Good point.
That's so good, because what I said, and look, my background, my master's in psychology, and my whole, I know what I'll do with my feelings. I'll think them, because then I can control them. And the nature of this is, as Barnett said in the very beginning, it's messy, and what you've added is that it is, excruciating in moments, and that's it. And we can, frame it and understand it and have all these great tools for, coping with it and so forth. But in the moment you're grabbed by it, it's real and it's huge.
So I'm quoting from a book from a friend of mine, gorgeous book, who says the ordeal is always a journey of intense emotional growth. Does that sound familiar to you, Daphne? Do you remember writing that?
Has a familiar ring.
Do you remember writing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you giving me the heads up. I should have read the book earlier.
Well, I mean, I think the ordeal, as talked about in that book, it's a transformative stage of relationship where everybody wants to give up and head for the bridge, and we don't know in that stage what the outcome is, and that's true at points of transformation in relationships that we'd all like to avoid, and of course it's also true in every aspect of our lives. When the house burns, when the car explodes, when the war comes, when people run off.
When people run off from their responsibilities, or I've heard people. I've actually heard people. Yes, or I've even heard people on news channels. It was a remarkable thing, and I understood the wisdom so deeply. Saying they were talking about end times. The end times are coming. The end times are coming. We're going to be washed away, and I thought I can understand the appeal of end times.
Well, that's almost like what you were saying, Daphne. If we pull out the fear, just unreel it completely and go all the way to, well, what if it's all over? Yeah. There's something in that, okay, I can accept that that's a possibility.
That's a head trip, though.
Well, I don't know. In the moment that it feels utterly real, that everything is falling apart, if we're okay with as dark as it could possibly get, then my sense is, we can kind of lift ourselves up. I mean, I see where it could be a head trip where I'm thinking, strategizing. Well, if it's really, really bad, I'll still be okay.
If you're thinking about it, as opposed to if you're thinking about it, then it is still strategic. How can I find ways to resist or to condition it? It is not the same as being entirely in the flow of it.
Yeah, I'm actually maybe, and I'm open to it, that. This wouldn't be the first time it's a head trip for me, but I'm actually moving towards the surrender piece. If I can really let go of the illusion that I have control and everything could go terribly wrong in that moment, there's a kind of collapse of my desire to manipulate and control, and I can be with what's coming up in a different way. That's what I'm speaking to.
Beautiful.
Well, I have to say, gentlemen, this reminds me of a time in my life when, as a fairly young woman, I was getting divorced, and I had never done that before and never thought I ever would, and was shocked and stunned and amazed that I would, and didn't think I'd live through it. And I went to this sanctuary place and sat in a little cabin by myself. There was some other people sort of down the pike near a pool. And I remember going through this absolute, total existential terror and saying, I shouldn't even use those words, but just sitting there in this white room and saying, now that I'm here all alone, who am I? You know, I mean, every sense I had ever gathered together of myself had been stripped away, and I just sat there in it. It was a stunning, completely unnerving experience, you know, some kind of momentary psychic death, I guess. And I sat there, you know, in it, and then I got up a few minutes later and walked outside and walked down to the pool, and this lady said to me, "Would you like a potato chip?"
There's your reality check.
You know, but that, you know, that, or the unreality check, who knows which was really the more real.
That is a good point.
But I can say, even recalling it now, what an absolutely terrifying experience it was, and how shocking it was to actually come out of it and re-enter the world of people and potato chips. I mean, I had left so much behind in that moment, and of course, as I later emerged through that experience, I had left a lot behind, and a lot of amazing new stuff began to arrive. But it's a tough place to inhabit.
Yeah, it is. By the way, we got a little email from the FCC. You are okay for you can say existential on the.
That's right. We will not be fine.
No. So that flew. We were nervous for a second.
Barnet was.
But that flew. It is a dreadful place. There is that imminent fear of non-being. It's dreadful. But there. I also want to speak to what I'm hearing you say between and underneath the words, and also from you, Freeman. It is a womb. It's a birth canal. There is something that is available if we can slide into it, and we can slide into it only by feeling those energies. We feel them in my head, and in my own experience, I know you feel them deeply and then they dissipate, and there's something else afterward. It doesn't make it less easy to go through. Yeah. But there is this canal, and I have this practice. I don't need any help imagining dire consequences. So I do have a referent for those imaginings, and I'm willing to make them as vivid as possible. And I also have a referent and a pretty good imagination for what is beautiful, and how I would love things to flow, and what the qualities of well-being and contentment and enthusiasm and anticipation and excitement, etc., and trust and hope and all of this juicy stuff, all of it causal. I have a sense of what that can look like too, and I flip them back and forth, and then I hold them up in my mind's eye and experience myself in the middle.
I love that.
Right, in that energy that lies in the middle. And there is lots of peace there, though you wouldn't know it from. I'm not
still who I've been, and I'm not yet who I'm going to become.
And I don't know how I'm being worked. These are resonances.
Yeah, that's great.
And I don't know where I am. It is less about where I am coming from, and more about who and what I am becoming. But the resistance is entirely from who I have been.
Yeah.
That's the one that's got its feet dug in.
So we are coming to the end of a segment, and it's sad because we're going to be saying goodbye, Daphne, to you.
But I'm going to be saying hello to you in
that's
about
right. You
an
guys
hour.
See each other soon.
Yeah.
Here's my invitation, because the next time, I know it's a little ride down the road for you, but the next time we have you on, which I hope is soon, I'd love for you to come in studio.
You have to bring your own chair, though, because Freeman's busting the chairs out.
No. We'll get the chair fixed by the time you get here.
I would love that, and I feel like this is a very juicy trialogue that's only found its feet.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, well, before we let you go, I also want to give folks your info, because one of your books, I'm going to misquote it, but it's something like 10 things to do when your life comes apart. Maybe I misquoted that.
Yes.
But I mean, I feel like, such a valuable resource. And so I want to give our audience, of course, information in terms of where they can find you. What's the best portal to find your work?
My website, which is my name, www.daphnekingma.com. 2 names that are hard to spell.
Or you can call me.
Okay, DAPHNEKINGMA. And the book you're referring to, Freeman, is The 10 Things to Do When Your Life Falls Apart, which is about living through these times of crisis in, whatever fabulous forms they're showing up in your life.
Will you bring a copy to lunch?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
And for those of you listening, we invite you to check out Daphne's amazing work and to look forward to her coming back on Cutting Edge Consciousness, and to stay with us through the break, because Barnett and I will be back after the break to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain. I saw a joke recently. I'm going to edit a little bit again for radio, but not much. It was one of those banners on Facebook, and it said, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel when we die is just the opening of another womb that we're coming out of. And I chuckled and said, oh, that's brilliant. The idea that, because I mean, one of the things that we were just talking about, the way I personally reference it is in some of the intense traumas of my life, adult life, well, even child life, but really I'm speaking now as an adult facing my world as I've held it coming apart, involves sleepless nights. And so it really is a dark night of the soul. It's like all night long I'm awake and I'm like, can't sleep, and I'm tossing and turning and I'm crying and I'm whatever I'm going through. And then the dawn comes up, and there's something really, I don't know, magical about the light coming up and the new day. And so as much as that, sort of banner is intended to be a joke, that there is a rebirth. There is a death and a rebirth, a natural cycle, and the death is sometimes excruciating and hard, but the light at the end of the tunnel is us being birthed into something new.
I have a really good friend who has said to me over the years many times that the night gives back what the day takes away. And
but you got to be willing to go through
restored.
it. You don't. I mean, you don't take a sleeping pill. You stay up and you struggle, because that's life.
We're restored, and we become replenished. And when the dawn breaks, we have the resilience and we have the resources to meet that day again. But the day takes its toll, and that night is restorative, even if it's sometimes not pleasant.
Yeah.
You become more on the other side.
Oof. Glad it's you, not me.
Exactly.
That's sentiment.
Things could be worse, right? It could be me.
Yeah. Oh, but again, I know that it's only a minute and a half before my moment will come where whatever the heck I was holding on to in a particular form, the form falls apart, and I have to, know that something will come. Something else will come. What I like about my life in general, this may be a strange segue, but I don't think it is that my choices organize thematically around, much of what we talk about on this show, like the quality of fun, the idea of being of service, the idea of how to express my gifts in a way that it's generous so that people can receive what I have to give, and it's not so much ego-driven about me gaining success or notoriety or whatever. All of which those pieces come along too, like the part of me that wants approval, the part of me that's trying to figure it out and double down on how do we get this to work, and outcome-driven thinking. All of that comes. But there's my commitment to organizing back to, as you like to say, the function, and letting go of the form. Not entirely, knowing there's forms that I could see it come out as, but I know enough to know that I don't know, and that I'll find my way. So what I want to report in the Dark Night of the Soul is the things I have anchored to. You mentioned your relationship with your wife, which I think is such a great anchor, or really what you guys have created in my mind, and Jazz and I have done something similar, is a container wherein you can bounce around. You can have these tough moments, and Sandy's not apt to die with you. You know, you do your sleepless night and she goes in the room, goes to sleep. You know, it's midnight. I've talked to him long enough. He's going to figure it out and I can go to sleep now because she's not dying with you. And I think that is, you know, again, a testament to what you've created, response systems that are really empowered, curiosity, you know, in the middle of the panic versus just doubling down on how do we fix it, you know?
I don't know. I want to share this. I don't know. Again, like as you just said, I'm not sure how this fits in and why it's a segue, but I want to share it anyway. So last week, I am at my market and I'm getting a coffee. And I'm standing behind a guy, a little younger than me, probably a lot younger than me, but very fresh-faced and beautiful. And he's telling me that he came down from Seattle and he's going to the beach. And then he said something I couldn't really track it about. I understood that he had a friend whose daughter passed away, was murdered in that incident in Santa Barbara.
Whoa.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I said, a friend. And he said, no, not a friend, my daughter.
Whoa.
And that he was there. And then his wife came up. I'm bringing this up because it's in reference to what happens when you see a relationship that is so intimate and the rapport is so deep that they are together weathering such storms. Oh. So his wife came up and she had two baby pails from the market. We're out at the beach and these were like beach
sand toys.
Beach pails with buckets. And she said she got the kids were waiting. They had some other kids that were waiting on the beach across the street, and they were going to meet up and scatter the ashes into the sea. So a couple of things happened to me in that moment. One is it rocked me.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I was also very aware. He said to me, "Thank you." And I was very moved that he would thank me. He said, "Thank you. I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's just that it feels better to speak it."
Oh, that's so wise.
So that rocked me. And then also I was aware that I could see how they were holding each other. And I could also see that it hadn't really landed in the body yet. It was still very etheric, very dreamy. Because they did not, I could see it had not yet processed their loss. It's so enormous that we protect ourselves by,
absolutely.
There were parts that were shut down.
Yeah.
They were at the cash register paying for their pails, and it was both poignant and they were joking and.
Yeah, you still have to pay for your coffee.
So life is messy.
It is
my point.
Well, and what Daphne said too about coming out of her, her moment of complete breakdown, and someone offers her a potato chip.
Exactly.
Who talks about this so beautifully? The show we did with Ken Druck, because his daughter Jenna passed away at a college age. She was on a trip to India and was in a bus crash. And he speaks so beautifully about in that moment. I might cry. Everything that I knew is gone.
It all changes.
And I still had to get up, and we still had to go through stuff, and we still had to go through the services and invite people and deal.
So
puts in perspective.
To sort of wrangle this all together, there are these crises that inundate us beyond our current capacities to respond, our accustomed capacities to respond. And
but
sometimes we can create communities.
That's it.
In which to respond to, through which to respond to them as this young girl's beautiful parents. I could see how together they were going through this dark night together and responding. And sometimes we do it in a community that we cobble together with our relationship to friends, both physical, non-physical, spiritual. However we pull it together, it's important to remember we are never alone. And in the depths of those moments, we don't always, but I certainly feel I have a tendency to forget that.
Well, and where you've created friendships and a marriage that can support you, because that's when we really know what we've got. I mean, that's such a almost cliche term, but it's so true. Who are the folks who will stand with us when it's completely messy and unpredictable, and help us with a container, a kind of structure, something that's reliable, so that we can go through it? Because look.
So you know that saying, you don't know what you've got until you decide to know what you've got.
I don't know that saying, but I like it.
That's me rewriting Joni Mitchell.
That's
with
right.
All due apology, all apologies and respect.
It's such a great point. So, Spence, any idea where we're at? Because I've completely lost. Usually Barnett loses control.
I've lost it. We got, what is that, 2 minutes?
2, yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's good.
Wow.
So
Why we get so much time?
I don't know. So there is a dawning, and there is a new day. And it doesn't minimize the painful parts of life and the little deaths. And, when we're in them, they're not little, they're big, and they feel overwhelming. But there's enough wisdom to know that's part of the experience. And that's the good news, Again, I don't look for these coming aparts in my life because they are uncomfortable and I don't necessarily like them, but I do have a level of reverence for them being part of the human experience enough to know that when I'm in it, that it's okay. It's all okay, even though it doesn't feel okay. There's enough of me knows. And there's, again, as you were pointing out, there's enough support around me for me to have that humanity.
There are some little deaths, as you refer to them, that we are that we can welcome and we can invoke and we can consciously choose to die to these things. There are many, many things. There are many attitudes and many responses and many assumptions and many patterns of behavior and belief that are old, that are baggage, that I continue to cart around, that I'm well served to recognize and to acknowledge and to release and to die to them and allow them. We had Joe Dispenza on last week. When you feed them with attention, you are myelinating brain function, creating neural patterns and reinforcing neural patterns. And when you shift attention from them, you are creating new neuronal structures, and those ones in due course atrophy and disappear. And so the idea that you can allow your past to slip away is a real one. And although we may not necessarily choose to allow the details, the who and the what, to slip away, the emotional baggage around them, we're really well served to allow to pass and to slip away in favor of something new. And so there's little deaths and conscious deaths and big deaths and deaths by crises.
Indeed. And the death that we're facing is the end of the show.
We just ran out of time.
Yeah. So we invite you all to join us again because we will be reborn next week.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks for tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness.